this seminar, right? We are on the home stretch for this seminar. The last point now is to prepare the actual presentations and then to also deliver it, right? And I keep saying this is important, so I'm going to tell you why we are bothering you with all these seminars. By the way, who of you participated or attended this Martika talk that I gave in January, I think? No? No? Excellent, because I'm going to repeat exactly the same talk with exactly the same jokes in exactly the same order. So, excellent. So it's all new to you. So I'm going to explain why we are bothering you with all of that. And basically the reason is this. Computer scientists basically are generalizing over a large sample size I've seen now, are socially challenged, uncommunicative. Most of them are nerds. Come on in, take a seat. Most of them are uncommunicative. They hide behind their PCs, maybe look up over the screen occasionally, right? Effectively, most of them, I'm talking about you, all of you, exactly unable to communicate. Actually, often it's his. We actually have a large portion of her today, which is good, right? So that raises this level already. Now, okay, what's wrong with that? This is why I personally also studied computer science, because I didn't like people and I didn't want to communicate. So I thought, hey, computer science, that's it, right? I don't need to talk to people. Well, it turns out, then you got your MBAs, your Masters of Business Administration, incompetent, dazzlers, ta-da, great speakers, communicators. Who is the boss of whom in the end? Who earns more money? Not you. Right? Do you want that? Do you want to be the people who earn less money, even though you're more competent than the others? No. Excellent. We all agree on that? No, you don't agree? Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. It always confuses me. Yeah. So I guess we can all agree this is not as it should be, right? So let's fix this. We can do not much about that. That's their problem. But we can do something about this one, right? Unable to communicate. So when you go to a talk, what do you expect from a talk, a lecture, a speech? All boils down to the same thing. What do you expect from a talk? When would you say that, or what would you think should happen during a talk so that you leave it and say to your colleague afterwards, hey, that was good.
Not sleep.
Not sleep. Sometimes a good sound sleep during a talk may be the best outcome you can hope for, but typically not sleep. Yes, I agree. But that's maybe a lower level of expectation, right? But what else? Do we have any more requirements for something so you say, that was pretty good. I like that.
A consistent theme, maybe.
Consistent theme. Okay, anything else?
It should deliver some information so that you understand it.
Come on in. Deliver information in a way that you can understand it, and maybe also information that is relevant to you, right? Could be information that is, I don't know, about latest discoveries in pyramid research. Might be a fascinating field, but maybe, I don't know, not my cup of tea. Anything else?
A good level of abstraction, maybe.
What is good?
It depends on the topic. So
right.
If it's, for example, a presentation of a paper, not go into each detail so that you don't make the people not want to read the paper. Like give interesting details. But
so good means the right level, not too abstract, not too detailed, right? So that's always difficult, right? Anything else? Guys, you come with low expectations. Nothing else? You're easy to please, I must say that. Good. Oops, careful. Okay. Well, if this is all true, and I bet you have gut feeling-wise, maybe you're not saying it out loud or cannot even write it down, but I'm sure you have some more expectations in the back of your mind. think about that. Think about that when you brush your teeth next time or whatever, right? Think about what you expect from a good talk, as opposed to a talk or to a talk, right? What you would say makes a nice talk, a good talk, an interesting thing, that's something that you look back on. And once you've identified that, we are coming back to the golden rule, right? And the golden rule is, as usual, this: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you have identified things in your mind, I would say, by example, by prior experience, by things that you wish would happen but never have seen, this is good. Do it. A common pitfall that I've seen is that people emulate typical talks. We are all emulation learners, right? We learn by emulating patterns that we've seen from childhood, from baby age on. We all emulate, we learn by emulating. And then we emulate typical patterns, common patterns, but not good patterns. Right? So look for the nice examples and try to do that, not the, everybody doing like that. So the typical teacher in class talks to the wall and blah, 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 and drones on and doesn't hear any mumbles. I bet you've seen that, right? Don't do that, even though it might have been the median case. Don't go for the median case, go for the top 1 percentile. Right? You agree that this is a bad talk, right? If I send there, you wouldn't call that good, right? I hope so, I strongly hope so. Agreed? Excellent, good. So, emulate the good examples that you've seen. If you don't have good examples, I'll give you at the end of today, I'll give you a couple of pointers where you can get good examples. Just one thing, TED Talks. You've heard about TED Talks? Listen to TED Talks. Maybe not just from the content. Yes, maybe not all the TED Talks are content-wise interesting, but most of them from a presentation perspective, from an engaging perspective, from an interact. Okay, they don't usually interact, but from an engaging perspective, they're typically pretty good. And watch out for these techniques there. Watch out what they're doing in these talks and how this works and how the mechanisms are. And try to emulate that. Don't try to emulate the average, lower quality academic talk. So, basically, we could stop here, right? Look for good examples, extract the patterns, emulate those patterns. That's basically the gist of what I'm going to say. But I'm going to say so now for another 50 slides. But that's my main message. Look for the good examples. What I in more detail want to talk about is content of talks, how to prepare for a talk, how to give the actual talk once the big day comes. And that's the first 3 things are our main points. This is going to be probably skipped by time constraints. So, content. What's your content? The content is what you have at hand, the stuff you want to talk about, right? Okay. So, before you look into that, what's the goal of a talk? Once you have the weight of all this content sitting there, your master thesis, all the papers you've read for your seminar now, later on your PhD thesis, whatever. What's the goal? Once you weigh all your content, all the material against your talk, how do you balance that? You put everything in your talk. For a PhD defense here in Paderborn, maybe a particular odd case, but for a PhD defense, you have 20 minutes. You can talk for 20 minutes, then you're stopped. Well, maybe 21 minutes, but then you're definitely stopped. Can you put all your PhD into 21 minutes? If you can, you did something seriously wrong in your thesis, right? And this is not enough. So you need to select. How do you select? Well, you need to select stuff that is interesting, meaningful, plausible to explain. And before you go there, before you even go there, well, again, talk, goals. Let's start at the beginning. What was your very first point? Keep them awake. The primary goal of a talk is to keep your audience awake, right? If you fail with that, all else is futile. Okay, keep them awake. Basically, you need to explain yourself. Then, second goal, explain yourself. What's your problem that you're solving? What's your idea? What are the details? Time permitting, what are the details? And then you never have enough time. You always have to choose stuff. So if this is all your material here, this is the area of the material, the orange case, and the red case is the area of the red colored area is the time you have for the talk. How do you distribute that? Well, you can stay shallow, or you can dig deep. My typical recommendation, and probably most of everybody's recommendation, is rather dig deep than stay shallow. Now, you cannot just dig deep, because then nobody understands your problem, right? So you need to do a little shallow stuff at the beginning. What's the problem? What's the idea? And then at some selected point, dig deep. Go into some level of details to get this, oh, that's interesting feel. This, in such a talk, you'll end up, at the end, you'll leave saying, yeah, I knew all that before, or I could have figured that one out, right? This is not surprising. This is all superficial blah, blah, right? Yeah, you don't want that. You want, at some point, to provide, we are all techies, right? You want to provide some, that's interesting moment towards your audience. And you only get that this way. With that, this is blah, blah, blah. But even there, you need to put things into context. So start shallow, and then progressively go deeper. Right? That's sort of the material selection. We're still in the material selection, pre-selection phase, right? So here's the point where you start thinking about all the stuff that you have collected now. Okay, what do I need to orient my audience? What do I need to communicate so they understand what I'm talking about? What's my problem? What's the basic idea that I'm talking about? And then which of all the interesting details is actually something that is easy to communicate, nice to communicate, leads to this aha, interesting feeling, moment with the audience. Right? That's the type of questions you need to ask yourself here. And then you throw away probably 80% of your stuff, maybe even more, and that's okay. If you think, since we're now talking seminar here, if you think you get a good grade for the seminar talk by putting as much stuff as possible into your slides, you are terribly mistaken. The only grade you get then is unable to select. Right? Select, choose, drop stuff. It's impossible to communicate everything that you've read or written. So make choices. Make good choices, but make choices. Okay. In order to get the audience here, because yes, they might be awake, but they're still sitting there staring and thinking about something totally different. The transition from the shallow phase to the deep phase here, that's always a challenge in a talk, right? Okay, so I explain the high-level detail, the high-level setup of the problem. This is about, I don't know, data center networking, resource assignment, blah, blah, blah. And now let me talk about the concrete NP-hard subproblem. Bang, bang, right? This transition is too hard. Right, that you lose your audience if it goes like this from one to the other. So this is often a challenge to keep the attention span of the audience there. You need to get this, you need to feed them. You need to feed them and make them hungry for, oh, okay, I understand. That's an important problem. Oh, that sounds fascinating. How do I solve this? Please, tell me the answer. And then you go, right? And then you can, this desire, you need to create this feeling, I want to know more about that. No recipe, sadly, no common recipe for that, but still something that keep in the back of your mind. So, non-goals. Show as much stuff as possible. Clearly a non-goal. Dazzle everybody with your brilliance. Dazzle everybody with how intelligent you are, etc., etc. Okay, don't quote me, but yeah, a little bit. Once you come to job interviews or something like that, yeah, a little bit sneaks in here, right? You want to show off. Even in your talks, you want to show off a little bit. But don't make it too obvious and too blatant. So, what tools do you have? You have effectively 3 tools. You got the material at your disposal. The papers you've read, your master thesis, whatever. You got your preparation. We'll talk about your preparation next. And you got yourself. You yourself are your own best tool when giving a talk. Use your strengths. Think about your weaknesses, identify your weaknesses, know yourself, try to overcome them, but first of all, you need to know your weaknesses. If we were to invest more time, when this is a point where in an interactive version we could now do a group work, 10 minutes or so, and you start writing down your own strengths and weaknesses for giving a talk. Maybe I'll ask you to do that at home, because we all have pros and cons and strengths and weaknesses. So, but you need to do that. This yourself, yes, this tool is very powerful, but it's not the only one. Actually, the audience is sort of part of that communication. It's always a two-sided thing, right? So you can interact. You can interact with any audience, big or small, friendly or unfriendly. There's always an interaction going on. So these are the three main points. Let's talk about that quickly, one by one. So your material. Again, as I said, you got too much stuff. During your preparation, sit down, think about carefully what is the main message I want to convey. Try to write down a single sentence, the take-home message, sometimes also called the elevator pitch. You know elevator pitch? What's the idea? The idea is you meet your boss in front of the elevator. You press the call button. You got 30 seconds before the elevator rides. And then your boss asks you, oh, by the way, I remember you work for us. What are you doing again? I don't remember what you're doing. Tell me, what are you doing again? And then you got 30 seconds to justify your existence in the company, right? Steve Jobs was famous for doing that. He was famous for doing that, waiting. He actually gave people typically the time for the elevator ride to explain themselves. And then sometimes, more often than people liked, he said, we don't need that at Apple, you're fired. American labor law, tough luck, right? You better have a good elevator pitch in such a situation. For your seminar talk here, if you don't have an elevator pitch, you're not fired, but you failed the seminar, right? So have a clear message, a 1 or 2 sentence message. What is the 1 or 2 sentences that you want your audience to remember after they go home, after they had dinner, and somebody asks them, what was his talk about? If then they can, not verbatim, right, but if they then can regurgitate, reproduce this idea. Okay, that was the guy with the, okay, the 5G frequency allocation by machine learning is a good idea because the problem space is so big, machine learning actually works. Excellent talk. If you manage that, that's literally an excellent talk. If you can impress 1 or 2 sentences in the mind of the audience after that is still there after dinner, you've done an excellent job. It would be a fun experiment to try that. I call you up, all of you up after dinner on the first seminar day, and okay, please give me. Yeah, I'm not going to invest the time, but that might be nice. Okay, so. Remember, I asked you to condense stuff down more and more in every step of the seminar process. We started from 50 papers. We condensed that down to 5. We condensed that down to a table of contents. We expanded it again to the actual write-up. Now we're condensing it down to 15 slides. And before that, you need to condense it down to 2 sentences. 2, 3 meaningful sentences. That's the stuff you work towards. If you don't have that clear in your mind, I actually suggest write it down on paper. Write it down on paper, and then whenever you draw a slide, whenever you think about a sentence for your talk, double check against this. Does it help me to convey this message? What's the purpose of this slide for this message? And if you can't answer that question, the slide is gone. Right? If it's sort of a blah blah, okay, general role of something, it's like gone, tough luck. Okay, yeah, makes sense? Excellent. Now, when you do that, what do you need to keep in mind? Well, you need to keep in mind your audience. It's a two-sided thing, right? Communication is a two-sided thing. You need to keep in mind your audience. The same topic, the exact same topic needs different talks for different audiences. What does it depend on? What matters? Which audience features, audience parameters are important there? I have topic XYZ. I want to prepare a talk. What should I think about as audience parameters to come up with a good talk?
Background?
The background of my audience? Background means
knowledge, what they have.
knowledge, what they have heard. Exactly. So here, this is easy, right? You have a fairly homogeneous background in your audience. You're all CS, maybe CE. It's fairly consistent, right? It's not like you're speaking to a general interest audience where you might have grandparents and children and social science and blah, 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 total mixture, right? So you got a fairly homogeneous background. That's nice. What else? Clearly key parameter. But there's a couple more. So you're not, in the seminar setup, you're not the only guy giving a talk, right? How about the order of the talks? Say we have a couple of 5G topics, right? If you know from the order, from the program, that you are the last person after 4 others to talk about 5G, is it a good idea to include a slide saying, okay, let me introduce to you the idea of 5th generation mobile communication. What is your audience going to do? What are you going to do if you sit in the audience at such a point? That's what's going to happen, right? The forehead hits the table. Golden rule, don't do unto others, right? Keep in mind what your audience has been told in the program up to that point when your talk happens. So that's more work for the guys who come later in the program, that's less work for the guys early. But on the other hand, the guys early in the program have a harder time providing the general setup, providing the general motivation. It balances out, right? There's slightly different challenges. I'll of course give you the program up front. Actually, probably should do that soon, I know. And give you a chance to think about that. Feel free to talk to each other, right? Feel free to communicate, right? But I really don't want to hear 5 times in a row, 5G is great because of blah, blah, blah. Right? This is torture. So, the technical and the experience level, absolutely. Expectations of the event, order. Is this a fairly specialized thing? Is this a tutorial talk? Is this a general interest talk, etc., etc.? Talk situation. The sequence of the talks, is this a tired audience at the end of the day? Does this happen after lunch? Are you the last guy before lunch break? Or are you standing in front of a coffee break? Something like that. Size of the audience matters to a surprisingly small degree. Whether you have 10 people or 100 people in the audience barely matters. Makes almost no difference. 1,000 people, I've never had talked to 1,000 people. 500 people barely matters. Barely makes a difference. Once you got 10 upwards, it's almost all the same. Okay, so know your audience. Here it's easy, right? But in a more general setup, try to learn as much about your audience as you possibly can. And that helps you again to select and to come up with a good key message for that. What else do we need to know to prepare your material, to select, to think about this early stage? You need to know your time budget, right? How long are you allowed to talk? Is there a discussion phase planned? How long is this discussion phase intended to be? In general, what are the rules? Is it expected that you will be interrupted with questions, or is it expected that you talk straight on and all the questions are collected at the end? That matters. That makes the planning for a talk slightly different. And basically, again, select your material accordingly. Do trial runs, of course. We'll talk about trial runs later. Okay? So that's sort of the core structure. Let's go a bit more in detail about the preparation. So you have in your mind a clear idea what your take-home message is going to be. You have narrowed down your material already somewhat. Now, we need to structure this. We need to turn that into a concrete presentation. At some point, you need to stand and talk for 20, 25 minutes, right? You know, reaching this, we're building this bridge. So you want to structure things. Let me start by talking about the most common case, and the seminar is not the most common case. The seminar is a special beast, right? The most common case is you're going to talk about your own work of your group, your project group, something like that, right? That's your typical case. So you talk about your own work. What do you need to do? Maybe you need to give people background information. Okay, I know you're all CS guys, but maybe you are not aware of the most up-to-date developments in software-defined networking. Let me give you some background on what's going on there, right? Background, stuff that is not what you present as innovative material, but things where you think you need to bridge a gap in knowledge in order for the audience to understand what you're talking about, right? That's a typical background. Motivation. What is the motivation part? Why is it a problem? Why does it matter? Why is it an open problem? Why has nobody else solved it? Why is it a relevant problem? What would happen if we could solve it? Right? These type of questions go into motivation. In which order you do background and motivation is often actually not so easy to decide. Because often you cannot understand motivation if you don't have the background. On the other hand, explaining background without motivation is boring. Right? So there's a catch-22, and that depends on the concrete setup, the concrete question, the concrete material, in which order you do that. Both options are valid. First, let me give you some background on concrete developments in networking. And that means that the following problem emerged, ... right? Or, okay, there's a cute problem here. Look here, this is what we currently need to solve. And this is because of the following things have happened in networking. Right? That's basically the two options you have. Both can work, not necessarily both options works for the same speaker. This is highly individual, what works better for you as a speaker. Think about in which order you do that. Typically, you need to do both. Right, and then we are slowly coming into the deeper part. Right? Again, you cannot explain everything. Explain the interesting parts. What exactly did you do? Be precise. Be compressed but precise. Pick sub-problems, but what you talk about, you should do precisely. And exactly, and give people enough understanding to say, ah, yeah, interesting. Right? This, oh, interesting moment. This is what you're shooting for. Otherwise, it's just blah, blah, blah. It's an MBA talk. We don't want that. What did you really do? What was your contribution? Etc. Differences to related work. Also important for seminar, again, special piece, but for your master thesis, that's relevant. Level of detail matters, depends a bit. Okay, by the way, what's the difference between related work and background? That's not the same thing. Often confused, but two very different things. Background versus related work.
What research has been done similar to the work that I've contributed, for example?
Related work is your competitors. Background is what all of you and the related work builds upon. Right? Okay, and then go into which methods, tools, etc., etc. Show the results. Results often are I often find relatively boring. Okay, you got a graph, the graph with two curves, and of course your curve is going to be better than the others. Two conclusions. Don't bother people with summaries. I don't like summaries. Two conclusions. Explain what follows from all of that. Don't just repeat what has been said. That's boring. Okay, that's the typical technical talk. Master thesis presentation, project group, blah, blah, blah. A seminar differs from that. Why does a seminar differ? Your typical seminar talk is different. In which sense?
There's no own work.
There is no own work, right? You're only talking related work, right? It can still make sense to have background. If you think there's a knowledge gap in the audience, I don't know, the guys with machine learning in 5G, maybe you want to talk a little bit about what 5G is, maybe you want to talk a little bit about machine learning in general. 1, 2, 3 slide, 3 is probably already too much. So that can be a good idea. Before you then go into concrete problems and concrete approaches. And you definitely also want to give motivation. What the heck is he talking about? That's the motivation slide, answering the what the heck question. And all the rest basically is still true. Right? So as I said, creative part, what you get a good grade in a seminar for, comparing different related works. Same thing here. Okay, if you ever are in the situation to give more generic talks, not so much technically oriented talks, there's then a wealth, there's a rich literature of help literature, how to give talks. I'll cite you one example, how to structure talks in general, the so-called AIDA principle or the AIDA structure. AIDA being the acronym for Attention, Interest, Desire, Action. And that's sort of the marketing sales pitch type of slides. You want to attract attention, you want to raise interest, create desire for change, and then action, the options, what you can do, buy our product, right? That's then the typical thing that you go for. If you ever are in the situation, remember there's a slide there and go back to that. So, that means you have a structure, right? You don't have two options. In your mind, your structure of your talk, what comes after what, needs to be crystal clear. Right? If you yourself are confused, your audience has no chance of keeping up. You yourself must be crystal clear. The question is whether you will tell your audience about this structure or not. And again, there's pros and cons. The pro of telling your audience about the structure. I'll do this, then I'll do that, then I'll talk about this, after that we will discuss. Right? That's tell the audience about the structure. Well, you prepare them, you do expectation management. Okay, that's what's going to happen, fine. Okay, I can live with that. That's what I imagined to happen. Typically, you don't want to, you want to surprise, but not too much. Right? So, yeah, nothing wrong with that. What's the disadvantage of telling about structure?
Some people might leave before they actually materialize.
Yeah, depends where you put this. Again, this is not an obvious question. Let's say you do this very early. The traditional setup could be to say, okay, you got your title slide, my name is, the title of my talk is, bang, next slide, structure slide, right? Bang, 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 bang. I do this, then that, then that. Hard to leave before that. But there's downsides to that. What are possible downsides?
They might feel that they already know that stuff.
This is boring, right? In a sense, this is boring. I bet you good money, despite me now telling you not to do this, I bet you good money that we will see at least 3 talks which have the following outline slide. Bullet 1, motivation. Bullet 2, problem definition. Bullet 3, related work with sub-bullet, option 1, option 2, option 3. Bullet 4, conclusion. I bet you good money this will happen. Is this telling you anything surprising? No. Right? It's only telling me that, okay, he copied the standard outline slide number 5. It didn't bother to commoditize it, to customize it to this particular talk. Right? So you bore the audience. Always the cardinal sin in the talk. Downside 2, it costs time. Time is precious. So it costs time to do something. So if you do an outline slide, and I think you should, the advantages probably outweigh the disadvantages. I think you should, at least for talks of the slides, for talks of the length we are talking about here, make them interesting. Avoid such meaningless templates. Don't do this, right? If you have an outline slide that says literally motivation, problem definition, solution approach, evaluation, comparison, conclusion, skip it. Spare yourself the torture of being God, okay, another one of those, right? Because that's exactly the reaction that you're going to get. Make it concrete, specific to the talk. What problem are you defining? Frequency allocation, whatever, right? Be concrete, not meaningless templates. This is a template to be replaced by, to be filled in by the content you have. Don't pick this literally. Be creative. You can do wonderful things there. I remember one very nice talk that one guy had, sort of 2 competing schemes comparing, and he sort of had a left column and a right column on his outline slides, and he sort of ping-ponged material back and forth between that. That was great. This was very, very lively, very, very visual. What do that, and if you do that, and I think you should do such an outline slide, it's usually an extremely good idea to repeat it. You have invested the time to make your audience aware and familiar with this, then use it again. Use it again as a handrail, as a guideline for the audience, and show it occasionally when you switch from motivation, problem, definition, solution approach. Highlight where we currently are, I don't know, font, boldface, color, whatever. Solution approach. Now we come to the solution approach, right? Also comforting to the audience. Okay, we are sort of in the middle. Great, coffee is approaching. Repeat that. Gives also somebody who nods off a chance to, okay, where are we? Okay, there we are, right? Because people will nod off. In every talk, with the best speaker, I don't know, 20% of the people, probably more, will, okay, yeah, here we are. And that's okay. It's impossible to estimate otherwise. So think of this as a catch-up opportunity. And do this also rhetorically, right? To do this when you bring up this slide. Okay, so far we talked about the motivation and the problem definition. Commoditize to your concrete talk. Now, what does that mean? What options do we have at our disposal? Let's talk about solution approaches. Right? Next slide. And there you move on. Despite me always telling you don't summarize on a slide, I'm still telling you to repeat stuff. In particular, in this context, there's sort of a rule of threes. And the rule of threes is you announce what you are going to say. You're foreshadowing. And that's basically what your content slide is. Tell them what you are going to tell them. Tell it. And at the end of each such little section, do a summary. Do an intermediate little tiny summary. Doesn't need a slide. Doesn't need any fancy stuff. Summarize. What have we achieved? What's our intermediate level now? What have we established? Okay, so we can move on. Right? This triad, this three-step thing usually helps a lot for memorizing and understanding of such material. At each step of your content, when you move from one stage to the next, from one chapter to the next, this is a good idea to have happen. And also if you zoom out for your entire talk, you're doing the same thing, right? On the content slide, you are going to tell your audience, I'm going to do this, this, and that. And then you do it. And then to some degree, yes, it makes sense to summarize, but the concluding part, the what does it mean part, is far more important. Okay, once you have a structure, and once you have told your audience the structure, you need to stick to it. Don't deviate from it. That's totally confusing. It's totally confusing for the audience if you, okay, I have forgotten something here on this slide. Okay, now we're back here, right? Jumping back and forth. And, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you on slide 17 earlier on, there was one important sentence I missed. I'm now going to tell you. It has nothing to do with the content here, right? It just, yeah, bang, you sneak it in. Foreshadowing, and I will tell you, and I will going to, and it'll be so great once we are there. Skip it, just move on, right? So in general, don't avoid all that. The summaries are important. Get the visual marks by the content slide typically, but no jumping back and forth. German as a language has a nice expression here, roter Faden for that. Literally translates as red thread, but that's not an idiom in English. There's no such nice concrete thing. Anybody knows a good translation for that? Structure. Line of argument. Line of argument is probably the closest thing, but this red thread thing is the idea. You have an entire tapestry or cloth, but you see one thread in red shining through, and you can use that to jump from one part to the next. Okay, so with all that being said and done, we still have not decided yet what we actually use to present material. And one option is actually skip all that, what we talked about, and you do nothing. You do no material at all. No material, of course you have material and content. What I'm saying is prepared material to be presented. No slides, no nothing. You and your voice. And that can work perfectly. You can have very good orators who are doing exactly that. For general purpose talks, this is probably a good idea. Technical talks, I don't know, that's tough. That's tough to pull off, but if you want to experiment with that, by all means go for it. Typically, you might want to show a figure, a graph, a structure diagram, a results plot, something like that, and then, yeah, well, and this looks like this, and there you got a box and another box. That doesn't fly, right? This doesn't work. So, how about you do nothing prepared, but you do real-time writing? On a blackboard, on a tablet, on old-fashioned, on a heads-up projector. Whatever technical means you choose. Is that an option? A blackboard, a good old-fashioned blackboard. Can be an excellent way. It has one, what's the prime advantage of doing that?
Interactive.
It can be interactive if you accept interaction, but even if you completely block out your audience, like a good mathematician class, math class, still a blackboard has one key advantage. Imagine your analysis 1 class with PowerPoint. Imagine the speed. A blackboard writing slows the speaker down. Right? It slows down to the speed of the writing. And again, first semester math class with PowerPoint was just bang, bang, next slide, one more theorem. Good luck, right? Maximize theorem per second. So that it slows you down, and that can be a good thing, especially for people who tend to speak quickly. You've got a natural hindrance, a natural break built in there. Downsides, you need to have good handwriting. I couldn't do that. Nobody can read my handwriting, including myself. So you need to have good You need to have good handwriting. You also have sort of a break in the conversation. Imagine a blackboard, right? We talk, you communicate, you have eye contact, and then you turn around and write on the blackboard, right? And I don't see what's going on behind me, right? The paper planes fly through the lecture hall, etc., etc., right? So there's a break in the conversation flow. Interesting, I've seen very nice seminar talks where people writing on overhead slides or something like that, but probably not the common case. Right? My guess is what you are going to do is you're going to prepare slides up front, I guess so. You must have given some thoughts to that, probably. Maybe also handwritten. Again, excellent talks like that. Probably, I guess most of you are going to do PowerPoint or OpenOffice or LibreOffice or LaTeX, email, whatever, right? Something like that. I guess that's the common case. So let's concentrate on that. Before that, there's cool stuff around, right? I think I mentioned Tracy at some point. This infinite canvas where you can arrange things and then you can zoom in, zoom out, rotate, move. Totally cool. Totally cool if you know what you're doing and you don't overdo the motion sickness thing. Can be fun. So let's talk a bit about the typical PowerPoint things. PowerPoint is great, right? It's so easy to slam text on it. So if you look at our brain, right, sort of the left, typically left, what's it called? Schädellappen. Broca's Center for speech processing. Anyway, the anatomical structure there is doing language processing, spoken or written, and sort of the back of our brain, typically above the small brain, the main brain here, is doing image processing. If you now take sort of a heat plot, a heat map, this is overloaded and this is bored. Why? Because it's so easy in PowerPoint to put one more bullet point and one more bullet point and one more bullet point, so you cram it full of text, and you got language, and hey, what's wrong with my talk? I have so much information there. Yes, that's exactly what's wrong with your talk. You have so much information there. Nobody can understand that. Give them pictures. Don't kill your audience's brain by too much text. Give them pictures. This doesn't come out so nice. Give him PowerPoint, right? If you want to test a man's character, give him PowerPoint. So, what goes on a slide? What do you put on slides when you prepare your talk? This slide screams, you do what? You put what on slides? Okay, sorry, gave it away. Pictures, right? Pictures go on slides. And even more pictures. And if you think about stuff you could put on slides, you put pictures on slides. Graphs, diagrams, pictures, plots, whatever. Not words. If you can avoid it, not words. You cannot fully avoid it, but first think in terms of no words. Specifically, what does not go on slides are the actual sentences that you are saying. The slides are not the script for your talk. You don't read out the slides. This is almost enough to fail you for the seminar. If you stand there, turn your back to the audience and read out the slides. Have you seen such talks? Have you attended such talks? And you survived without a brain stroke? This is probably against human dignity, human rights conventions or something like that. This is criminal. This is terrible for an audience to listen to something. What is probably worse is if people take a printed script and hide behind the pages, blah 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 blah. And occasionally look over the pages, oh, still somebody there, I have to continue, blah 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 blah. Right? These talks exist, a surprising number. Don't read out stuff that is on the slides. The slides are not your script. This is not the replacement for the printed paper. So what words do you put on the slides? Keywords, key information, key buzzwords. What purpose does it serve? For you, the speaker, and for the audience? You, the speaker, should not need to look at the slides. You should know what's on the slides. I don't, I admit. Do as I say, not as I do. You should not need to look at the slides. You know what's on the slides, right? You can talk without a single point, a single moment looking at that. You know which animation exactly happens. The slides are for the audience, not for you. Admittedly, you also will look at them to help you move along, but in principle, right? I'm talking in principle. So for the audience, what are the slides for? The text slides, not the picture slides. The picture slides are easy. The text slides.
Main topic, like perhaps the one sentence idea, even less.
Yeah. Keywords, buzzwords, orientation. For the moment when you're not off, when you are distracted because a bird cries out, right? Then you can go back to the slides. The point is you are competing for resources in your audience's brain. And the two resources are the eyes and the ears. Right? You, the speaker, your voice competes for the ears. The slides compete for the eyes. Which is the stronger sense. If I'm going to bring up the next slide, and I still keep talking, what are you going to do? Let's try that. I'll keep talking. And now just, see? He immediately looked there. You all immediately looked there. I bet any amount of money. You immediately looked. Because you saw movement. We are very visually triggered for movement. We see movement. We look there. It could be a tiger wanting to eat us, right? It's a survival instinct. It's just a slide, but still, right? It might want to eat us. So you look. And then you see text. And text, we've been trained to do what with text? To read it. Right? You read. There is no way in hell you can avoid that. No speaker can avoid that. You bring up a new slide, people will read it. And they will read all of it. No matter whether it's important or not. You've read all of it, didn't you? Despite me trying to convince you otherwise, right? This is a strongly, deeply built-in mechanism. It's impossible to avoid. If you now do long sentences never ever sentences. They take a long time to process, and I'm talking a second or two, right? That's what long time here means. They take a second or 2 or 3 seconds to process, to read, to understand, to parse. Short, incomplete sentences, buzzwords, sentence fragments. That goes on the slide. With key information, things to help the audience move along in the talk, in case they got distracted, to get reacquainted to what's going on in the talk. So they accompany your talk. They are not the talk. The talk is what comes out of your mouth. That's why it's called a talk. right? And not a slide reading session. We could do a slide reading session, but that's a different thing. It's a talk. So use them as support material, yes, but they are not what this is all about. This is about you talking. So supplements, visual clues, that's all great. Never full sentences, keywords. Anything you put there competes for your audience's brain and distracts from your talking. So be as short and be as concise as possible. It's perfectly okay on a slide to be, well, creative with grammar if it allows you to reduce stuff. Leave out articles and so on. This is all okay. Compress as much as possible. Oh, and totally be neat. For example, no typos. Why? You stumbled, right? Again, this is competition. This is competition for brain resources. Type. That's wrong. And then you double check and, yeah, it's wrong. It's distracting. Distractions are the enemy. Distractions on the slide distract from the talk. That's the enemy. That's why typos are dangerous. Right? It's a half-second process. And you typo. Okay, it's just a typo. Okay. Still, it's a half-second distractions, and you are out of the flow. Right? You don't listen in that. Right. What else is a distraction?
Pauses, looking at the slides.
Pauses, looking at the slide. Yeah. I mean stuff on the slide. What is also distracting? What is typically a distraction? A typo is just an example for a bigger picture. A typo is a deviation from a rule, right? And deviations from a rule typically carry the notion of, okay, there's information included. Anytime you deviate from a pattern that you've established, our brains are trained to recognize patterns. Tiger stripes in a jungle, right? Wolf howling. This is all brain pattern detection that we do. When you deviate from a pattern, this triggers brain processes saying, merp, 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 alert, danger, something is different. Possible danger detected. And then you focus attention there. What could be a deviation from a pattern? Typos? What are visual patterns? Just look at the pattern. Don't look at the words. Look at the pattern. Look at the visual pattern of this slide. What are the visual patterns you see there? It has a structure, right? It's something repeats itself over all these slides. So give me some examples. Bullet points, for example. What about these bullet points? Their size, their color, the indentation levels. That's all repeated from all these slides, right? So it has established a pattern. Your brain picked them up. You didn't even notice, right? That's why you couldn't verbalize it. You didn't even notice, but it's there. You notice these patterns. That creates an expectation level, how the next slide is going to look. All great. If I deviate from that, if I now do, I don't know, pink bullet points indented differently, what is your brain going to tell you?
Something's wrong.
It's going to tell you something's different. Focus attention. Identify where the difference comes from. Identify whether the difference is a threat, right? Subconsciously. That's what's going on. And then you go through it and say, no, it's unimportant. It's just different. It doesn't carry any meaning. It doesn't carry any semantic. It's not a threat. Okay, we can go back to sleep. And you do it once and it's just annoying. If you do this on every slide, if every slide looks a little different, the brain is in a constant threat detecting. It's totally annoying. It's incredibly annoying if this happens. Right? Stay consistent on your slides. Be neat. Be totally, absolutely neat. Be overly prickish about little things like indentation, bullet point sizes, vertical spacing. All of that creates patterns that you want to see repeated as a human brain and get annoyed if it doesn't. Right? What other things? Capitalization is a typical thing you need to watch out for. Sometimes it's capitalized at the start of a bullet point, sometimes it isn't. Huh? What's the rule? What's the pattern? Right? We got the same process. Punctuation. Full stops at the end of a bullet point, yes or no? Most guys seem to say no. You could also say yes. It doesn't really matter so much, but be consistent. You can do a lot of things. A lot of rules are flexible on slides, except that one, consistency. Consistency rules. Consistency is king. If you are inconsistent, you've got a real problem. That's one of the most important things for these slides. Be neat, right? And I've seen people, and this is what always puzzles me. Tools like PowerPoint, LaTeX Beamer, etc., they make it so simple to be consistent. By the way, use return and tab to indent. You don't need to lift your hand from the keyboard, right, to do anything weird. You just keep typing, return, tab, tab, further indent, blah, 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 right? It goes out of its way to make it convenient to be consistent. And people go to extreme length to be inconsistent. It's work to be inconsistent. And that I don't understand. I'm at a loss to understand why people do that. You know, sometimes they have a little different bullet points there, sometimes it's an arrow, sometimes there's slight different color. Why? Why are people doing that? It's like cruelty to animals. Why are people doing that? Right, so inconsistency indicates meaning where there actually is no such meaning, and that's one of the worst things you can do to a human brain. Okay, so coming back to content. So you have all your material. Now you break it down into slide-sized bytes and pieces. Okay? What goes on a slide in the sense of volume? How much stuff can you put on a slide? And what does that mean for structuring your material into slides? Well, not much. Right? Not much. A typical rule of thumb says 7 by 7. Meaning 7 lines, 7 words each. This probably has more. 4, 3, 6, 8. So I just about made it, right? So that's a good idea to say, okay, that's about the volume, the amount of stuff I can put there. And content-wise structure, typically one heading, one piece of content, one slide. If at all possible, don't split a semantic piece of content over multiple slides. Leave out details, restructure, doing this slide title 1, slide title 2. Well, if it happens once in a talk, nobody's going to kill you for that. But it's not, yeah. Try to keep it one topic, one slide. Rule of thumb, again, most people for typical slides need about 2 minutes with a lot of variance. Your title slide, hey, it's me and my title of the talk is this. That won't take 2 minutes. Your content slide probably won't take 2 minutes, certainly not when it's repeated. A detailed mechanism algorithm slide easily takes 5 minutes, right? So there's a lot of variance, but still, this is a good rule of thumb. Now, that means when we are talking about 25 minutes talk duration, 12, 15 slides. If you think you can impress anybody with starting with 40 slides, yeah, you can impress some. You can impress me, but not in the direction you think, right? This is hopeless, right? It gets flicker-free at some point. One slide a minute and faster is flicker-free. You don't even, it all blurs. So, if you think you need more time becomes an essence. Have some sacrifice slides that you can skip, and where you build in shortcuts in your talk, in your mental structure of your talk, where you can say that, okay, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm running late, so I'm going to skip that. But never say that, right? Just skip it. Just silently move on one more slide and keep talking. But in your preparation, you need to have that clear in mind that, okay, this is an optional slide. If I'm doing good time-wise, I talk about it. If not, no harm done. I just skip over it, and I'm not losing anything. My talk structure does not become incoherent. It still all hangs together. Okay, I didn't talk about all things I could possibly talk about, but it still has a nice, important file, red thread. Okay, what does that mean practically speaking? Let's move a little bit into actual slide preparation. Well, this 7x7 boils down into something like size and font size. Let me give you an idea how font sizes look like. Which of that can you still read? 24. Okay, what about the 16 down here?
I can read it.
Hmm?
I can read it.
Yeah, you can read it. The guys in the back?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, you're all young and have good eyes, right? I'm struggling with the 16 here, with new glasses. So remember, you got old people in the room, and they don't have the best of eyes anymore. Your eyes are not the calibration thing here. Usual rule of thumb, 18 point is sort of the smallest font size you should use on a slide set. Smaller than that, people will start wondering. Also, typical rule of thumb, go sans serif fonts. You know sans serif versus serif fonts, the little crannies, etc., from the chisels with the stones. So basically says, in particular in small font sizes, these fonts are better readable. In general, keep it clean, keep it simple, don't do any weird stuff, don't do too much optical embellishments there. Similar color. Don't do fancy color schemes, keep it simple, keep it clean, nothing weird. I mentioned this pink text on red background, right? Imagine you're doing all your slides like that. You're guaranteed to cause seizures in the audience, but that's the only thing you will achieve. Bright on black, dark on white, that all works. This stuff doesn't work. In general, have mercy. Right? Don't overdo it. 2 or 3 colors is usually all you need. 4 is already pushing it. Illustrations, yes, absolutely, if they have a purpose, if they have a point. That stuff, I don't know. What's the point, right? For any illustration, this explains this. I don't know what the Eiffel Tower explains here. So, but stuff like a system layout, how an architecture looks like, a Venn diagram for something, you know, all the technical illustrations, great. Animations. Once you got this, hey, look, it's wagging its tail. Animations? Are animations a good or a bad idea? Well, this, I think we all agree. This is silly.
Not good.
Mm.
So animations between slides or like in the slides.
Okay, good question. So the one thing is the transition from one slide to the next by turning or dithering in opinions.
Not professional.
I think it used to be professional 20 years ago when it was new. If you do it now, it just says you're stuck with Windows 95 and don't know how to turn it off, right? That's about the message you get across. Animations on a slide. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, right? I agree. It depends, right? It depends. If you want to have bullet points partially exposed, because if you show them all, your audience will read them all, right? So that can be okay. But then again, keep it simple. Don't let the text fly in from the left with a squeaking tire sound. Something like that, right? Don't do that. Keep it simple. Use sparingly with a clear purpose. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with such animations. Specifically, animations in a graph or in a chart can be extremely useful. An algorithm illustration by an animation is so much easier, can be so much easier to understand and process than just a long description of the pseudocode. I'll show you an example in a moment. In a chart, often it's extremely hard to understand what goes on if you get a result figure, one axis, the other axis, and 5 curves inside. What is what? Which is which? What's going on here? It's all confusing. Yeah. If you start out with an empty chart, empty axes, and then what do you do when you show that? Look look here, I'm going to present my results in the following representation. On the horizontal axis, I'm going to show time, and on the vertical axis, I'm going to show energy consumption. I don't know. Right? Then you immediately put yourself, because the chart is empty, you put yourself into the position. I'm explaining the axes, I'm explaining the chart. I'm not immediately jumping to the result why the green curve is better than the blue curve. Right? Also for you, a rhetorical trick too. This is something people tend to forget. And then you have the audience looking at, okay, there's a green and a blue curve, but I don't understand the axes. What is it showing? It's also not nice, right? So, nice way of forcing yourself to do these things in order. And then you say, okay, and the blue curve is my reference case, and it has the following behavior. As you can see, it looks like logarithmic behavior. Now, animation, next step, here comes the green curve. This is my innovation, the new idea. It's so much better, it's not good value. Whatever, I don't know. So that can make sense. By the way, that's more work, right? Again, think thesis case, not so much seminar case, but think thesis defense. What do you do practically for that? How do you create such animations? What I just said. You have your results, 2 axes, 2 curves. You need 3 figures, right? You need 3 separate figures. If you do it right, you generate them automatically. Little script with matplotlib, gnuplot, whatever, gets you all this stuff. Right? So that think ahead, what I'm trying to say. So, let's, in the interest of time, let's look at, you remember the sieve of Eratosthenes? An algorithm to determine prime numbers. Now I give you an oral description. In the sieve of Eratosthenes, you write down all the numbers, and you start out with 2. And then you cross out all the multiples of 2. Then you go to the next number that is not crossed out, and cross out all its multiples. And then you go to the next number and repeat at infinity. Did you understand how it works? Because you've heard it before. If you look at an animation, these are all my numbers. I start out with 2, and I'm crossing out all its multiples. I'm going to the next one, and I know that these are not prime numbers. So I'm going to the next one, 3. This is a prime number because it's not crossed out. I'm crossing out all its multiples. These are not prime numbers. I go to 5. This is a prime number. I'm crossing out all its multiples, and so on. You immediately see what's happening, right? In such a case, animation is great. Probably easier than me talking 10 minutes trying to explain that. Okay, and so on and so forth, ending up with all these prime numbers. Okay, charts. Charts we already started talking about. Typically 2D, easier to parse than 3D charts. Large fonts, large symbols, thick lines, bold colors. I'll show you immediately this slide. It's exactly the same chart. The left chart is what you would put in your thesis in a PDF, because it goes on a printer with high DPIs, dots per inch, nice resolution, thin lines, very precise. Can you even see the lines? There are 3 lines in this graph. Can you see them? Yeah, exactly, right? Of course not. Maybe, the Hawkeye guys. For your talk, you need another version. You need another version with thick lines, big fonts, strong colors to make it easier to understand. And you need both versions. There's no getting around it. You need both versions for your talk. Even this is actually not nice, right? This needs larger fonts down here. This is not 18 points. This is too small for that. So whenever you start writing your thesis, you definitely automate the production of these charts. Look in my eyes and nod. You're not using Excel for that, right? You're using Matplotlib, gnuplot, something that you can script, something that you can automate. And then tell it to produce these different types of charts and put them in different subdirectories, etc. And then here you turn this into 4 different PDFs that you can import, or PNGs or whatever. Right? Do PDFs and get yourself a nice computer that can read in PDFs. Okay, similar, really borderline from the points here, from the sizes, but still kind of okay. Other than that, label the axes. Common mistake, common pitfall in a talk. People don't label the axis, they don't explain that, they just show some figures, some graphs. Imagine this is not here and that is not here. And imagine superpowers on behalf of the audience, understanding that this is, okay, this is data rate over time. Yeah, why didn't you tell me? Provide a legend, which curve is which. The blue curve is scheme X, the red curve is scheme Y. Again, I have no means of knowing that. Explain everything that you do there. If I wanted to be picky, this is actually wrong. Why is this wrong? It says time in seconds 1 times 10 to the 4. This is wrong on so many levels.
The scale, the 10 times 10 should not be there.
Yeah, first the x is of course not a times, right? It should be a dot, a slash c dot if you do it LaTeX. This is of course not an x. What's the correct way of writing this? The correct way of writing this is to say that this axis shows time divided by 10 to the 4 seconds. And then you get 2. Right? The axis is always a unitless number. So the correct way to say is, okay, I'm taking my time, I'm dividing out seconds, not hours or minutes, but seconds, and I'm also dividing out a factor of 10 to the 4, meaning that when I'm looking at number 2 here, this is actually, okay, this is 2, what is left over after 2? Okay, this is 20,000 seconds. Right? That's actually the precise way of doing that. Computer science as a science is too stupid to know that. When everybody else knows how to write that, this is sort of something that we came up with as a computer science and engineering science, doing it wrong. As a community, we're doing it wrong. Okay, equations, sparingly. Most talks are better off with no or few equations. Never tell that to a mathematician. They don't know what you're talking about if you say that. But if you do equations, again, be neat, make them look nice. Don't use Office's equation editor, this thing that does botches anything you put into it. Use LaTeX to typeset nice equations. If you want to integrate that in PowerPoint, there's a nice tool that's called TouchPoint for the Windows users. For the Mac users, LaTeX IT. It's also very, very nice. You just type in the formula, it produces a PDF, you just drag and drop the PDF into your PowerPoint, there you go. This is how this happens. So there's lots of tools that help you to integrate LaTeX into such. I've heard rumors that the newest Office version actually also supports, integrates LaTeX support. I've never seen it in action, but I've heard rumors about that. It only took them 25 years or so to realize that this is the superior approach, but hey, welcome to the party, Microsoft. We already talked about all these pitfalls of mathematical typesetting rules, right? That's the whole talk in itself. Just for the fun of it, a bad slide, too full, too many colors, squeezed figure, horizontal and vertical axis not scaled uniformly, etc., etc., etc. Right, so let's come to the actual talk. Slowly come to the actual talks. Once you've done all that, now you've had all your slides prepared, right, with all these considerations, do trial runs. Nothing beats trial runs as far as preparation goes. Ideally, get your buddies together, get an audience of 2, 3 to give them a talk. Girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, you owe them a favor afterwards, but that's okay, right? If you want to use that room, feel free, no problem. There's always somebody around. If the room is empty, you're welcome to do test runs here. If you have no boyfriend, girlfriend, friends, whatever, welcome to computer science. But you probably still want to do test runs. Take a water bottle. Put the water bottle there and talk to the water bottle. Right? Take a potted plant, whatever. Talk to something. It's much easier than talking into thin air. I personally find that. I find it much easier to practice with something. Put a face of somebody you hate on the bottom. That's also okay. And it's okay. Get worked up a bit. And anything that works for you is good. Your grandmother, your cat, whatever. All works. So, if you now find that during your test talks you find yourself a bit challenged because there's not enough text on your slides, you don't know how to transition from that. There's a couple of things that can help you. First of all, you know the speaker view, right? Oops. My version of the talk looks different than what you see on the screen, right? I have the next slide coming up. I have additional notes that I can put in here. I don't use it, but nothing wrong with doing that. The next slide coming up is extremely useful, right? So you need this dual screen setup. Any laptop nowadays can do that. So that also helps. If you're still struggling to find transitions from slide to slide, there's still a few things you can do. A typical hint I usually give is, for every slide, learn by heart, verbatim. That's the only thing you learn verbatim. The first sentence and the last sentence that you want to say on this slide. The first sentence to get you started, the last sentence to know what to work to, and also to build the transition to the next slide. Right? So you know what to end with on a slide, you said it, and you know this is your cue. Next slide, and then the first sentence, by heart, verbatim, you can reproduce it, no need to be nervous, and then typically people keep going. Right? Don't learn the entire talk by heart. Everybody knows immediately if you do that. These talks sound artificial, stilted, unnatural. This is terrible. This is okay, this still works, but not more than that. Speak freely. Right? Learning something by heart is actually the cardinal sin for giving talks. Speak freely, it's so much more natural, so much more engaging. So this dual screen thing also has the advantage, I don't need to look at my slides and turn my back at you, right? Keep eye contact. Keep eye contact with a couple guys in the audience. Know what's going on, you look at them, if they go, oh, I don't want to be here, I know you, yeah, I can see the time, right, it's Friday evening, but still, in a normal talk situation, you know whether they go, fascinating, they're stuck to your lips, right, or they go, oh. Right, you see what's going on. You also see, and that's useful information, they go, there's question, right? Question phase. What's your question? You immediately interact, you can engage. It's not a recording. A talk is not a recording. A talk is a conversation. If you see that your audience is bored, confused is the worst thing, but also the easiest thing you can do something about, right? Please look confused. Come on, look confused. No, you don't. Okay, then I cannot demonstrate if he doesn't want to look confused, right? If you see somebody looking confused, you ask them. Sorry, I didn't make myself clear. Anything I should clarify? Yeah. And then you have them. Then you have them in a conversation, and then you can work with that. And then, well, if you're unlucky, they back off. Oh no, all is clear, right? That's the worst, right? That's not a helpful reaction on part of the audience. You want a constructive reaction from the audience saying, on the previous slide, you had that definition, I didn't catch the aspect, blah, 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 right? Okay, thank you for the question. And guys, again, you're not the only person in an audience with such a question. There's usually 90% of the audience has the same question, just nobody dares speak up. So ask. Okay, well, with that, we are already at the actual talk, right? The big day is here. You should give your talk. Drum roll. So, a couple of things you need to do for the preparation. Before that, dress appropriately. Matters, can matter. For job interviews, etc. Don't be underdressed, don't be overdressed. Here, nobody cares, right? Well, within reason. Conferences, technical meetings, both overdressed and underdressed is weird. If you're the only guy in suit and tie and everybody else walks around in t-shirt and ripped jeans, what's this guy? What's this guy's problems, right? But the vice versa, the other way around example is just as bad. Are you the janitor? No, I'm the keynote speaker. Oh. It's always fun when electrical engineers and computer science mingle at a conference. You can tell, I don't know, with 90%, 95% correct prediction, CS, EE, CS, CS, EE. You just need to count the ties and totally different communities. Look at the venues. Where is the speaker position? Where is the projection screen? How is the audience oriented? Are you going to stand to the left or to the right of the screen? Get a lay of the land. Understand how this is all looking like, how this is all set up. Gives you peace of mind for that. Is there a blackboard or whiteboard available so you can scribble something if you absolutely want to? If you have a question from the audience, is this an option or is this no option? That means, do I need to prepare backup slides for some things that are foreseeable questions, or can I then just recur to Blackboard or something? So that's all useful information. Arrive early, test your projector, test whether your laptop works with your projector, invest money in original manufacture connectors. These Macintosh always tend to have problems when connecting to HDMI via cheap DisplayPort adapters. They often cause flickering, etc. This is 20 euros that you saved and that will ruin your life. That's exaggerating. That you rue spending the money for and not paying for the right value. And come with backups, please. If you go to a conference, have your talk on a USB stick and on some Dropbox or something, right? I've seen so often people, my laptop broke down, I can't give the talk. Yeah, you got an USB stick? No! Tough luck, suck it up. If you use your own laptop, please turn off your Wi-Fi. Turn off all your chat programs if you don't turn off your Wi-Fi. It's always fun to have during the talk pop up, hey buddy, want to hang out and get drunk again? Like last night? That was a wild night, huh? Yeah, of course. You don't want that. You don't want that to happen. Stop your screensavers. Anything that can possibly distract things is important. Generally, also keep calm. No point in getting nervous. It's too late for that now. Because now the talk starts. The chairman or the organizer of the event that you are, we are now happy to welcome Mr. von Neumann. Please, it's your time slot. Would you please come up? Ta-da! Now it's you. Every talk is a stage. Life is a stage, yes, but talks in particular happen on a stage. There's an audience, like in a theater. It's a performance. Think of it as a piece of performance art. And you're the main actor. You're the only actor, actually. It's a solo piece. So set the stage, set the right atmosphere, interact with people, keep eye contact, listen to them, talk to them. Talk to them, talk with them. Don't talk over your audience, blah, blah, blah. No turning back at them. And the one thing that happens is enthusiasm. That works. Again, we are human beings. We are triggered by visual clues and emotion. Basically, it boils down to these mirror neurons. We are picking up emotions from our counterparts in a conversation. If your counterpart goes the old shit, are you going to be happy? Yeah, everything is bad. That's so great. I doubt it. So, in a talk, this is great. You have the chance to talk about something really cool. Okay, in a seminar, not something cool that you did, but in a master thesis, etc., something cool that you did. You worked half a year on that. This is a great result. This is nice. You did a good job. You want to show that. You want to show off a little. This is a nice opportunity, right? Nothing to go. In a sense, now let me put this differently. Who of you goes to theater place? I know in Germany, language barrier maybe. What type of, if you go, what type of theater plays do you go to? Big production, 20 actors on the stage. Go to, oh, the German word is Kammertheater. Huh, how does that translate? Small productions with one, maybe two actors on the stage. If you get good actors and good productions, you might have 500 people in the audience, but this can create an atmosphere where you think you are alone with the actor in a room and he talks to you or she talks to you. This is what I mean here by intimacy. There's an atmosphere of conversation between you and every member of the audience. Right? It's not easy to create, but a couple of things work. A couple of things are eye contact. Now, that doesn't mean that you should stare at the same person continuously for like 2 minutes. At some point, this gets uncomfortable. Tell me when it gets uncomfortable. It did so 5 seconds ago, right? See? I'm not saying you should do that. I'm also not saying you should switch eye contact every second, right? There's a balance you need to follow. Now, again, look at your audience. In most audiences, you have a couple guys who sit there, I don't want to be here, I want to be at the coffee break, you want coffee, need coffee. Yeah, okay, they are hopeless. But in most audiences, you also have a couple guys who are sitting there, relaxed, enjoying, okay, it might be interesting. Open facial expression, talk to them. Talk to them, right? And usually you got 4 or 5, even in a small or big audience, doesn't matter. Pick 4, 5, 6, 7 people who have sort of a friendly, open body language, facial expression. And basically you have a conversation with these 4 or 5 people. All the rest in the room are more or less ancillary to that conversation, but that will not be so obvious. They will still think that you are talking to a few people, and then you keep eye contact for a reasonable amount of time, and then you switch over to somebody else, and then this is sort of the conversational attitude. And that works. And again, a lot of it is subconscious in our brains, how we react to people talking to each other. So, if you create that, if you create the impression that you are talking to them, not in front of them, you've gained a lot. And again, I suggest that you talk in a positive, enthusiastic manner about the material. If you don't like the stuff you're presenting, why should the audience like it? Right? That transpires, that transports itself over to your audience. At the end of the day, it is you. How do you express enthusiasm? I'm so enthusiastic about this topic. This is wonderful. Would you believe that? You immediately laughed. Do you believe that? I doubt it, right? So when do you ascribe authentic feeling of enthusiasm to a speaker? You listen to the words, expression, facial expression, the tone of voice. This is this is hard. This is so great material. Try it. Don't laugh. Try that yourself before you laugh. This is actually tough. I'm not that good an actor. And third part, body language. Body language. Hey, open body. If you stand there, defense posture, crawling into yourself. Like, don't hurt me, but I'm still enthusiastic about the material. Right? Again, this is, you can smile as much as you like. If you stand like that, open, inviting body language, totally different impression to a talk, right? And again, no turning your back. Talk to the audience, not in front of them somewhere else. Try that. Try that when you do a test run here. That doesn't work if you do it alone. You need a couple buddies, right? Try that, and once do exactly the same talk, sort of in a neutral, don't move around, I just give the talk fashion, like a robot, right? And then do the exact same talk, interacting, I'm overplaying now, of course, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? Positive body language, positive facial expression, enthusiasm in the voice, right? Modulate your voice. Going up and down in volume is a typical thing. A good indicator for depression is what? Reduced variance in volume. People speaking at the same volume continuously. That's a good depression indicator. Do you want to come across as a depressed person here? If you do, go seek professional help. This is nothing to joke about. So, all that transports itself. So, speaking, language, speak freely. As I said before, speak freely. The one cardinal sin is learning stuff by heart. Speak freely, no matter what else. Slow, but not glacial. Some people overdo it with the slow speaking. Use the slide for the cues, and when you do that, give your audience some help. Maybe you point them. How do you point to slides? Well, one's laser pointer, right? The other option here, immediately this, right? Or we don't have such a stick. A stick is also a good thing to use. Pros and cons? Laser pointer, option 1, laser pointer, option 2, this. Pros and cons?
Depends on the location.
Well, here, I'm talking this room. I know, in the Audimax I cannot do this, I know. Here. Think from audience perspective. What is easier for you to follow? Really? Well, that's amazing. You immediately said, intuitively laser pointer. I would have thought that this. Come on, you can see where I'm pointing, right? My entire body points towards this one point. If I'm using the laser pointer, stand here, shooting from the hips. It's a talk, right? I hope you're looking at me because I'm talking. And now I want you to focus on one point on the slides. Highly indirect process, right, from doing that. If I go over there and say, here, it immediately follows from the entire flow of the action. So, I'm surprised you said laser pointer. Not my reaction, but okay, interesting. If you do laser pointer, I strongly suggest don't shoot from the hips. Hey, cool, right? Also, body extension. Use the arm to point. Easier for the audience. Ah, he's pointing, right? Here you probably didn't even notice. Clear posture. And if you do laser pointer, that's a giveaway. Don't shake. Everybody is maybe a bit nervous, but if you go like this, maybe it's overdoing that. It doesn't happen this way. People don't go this. That usually doesn't happen. With the laser pointer amplifies small movements, right? Small hand trembling gets amplified over the distance. So this is less conspicuous. Also, speaking language, I guess none of us is an English native speaker. We all speak with different accents. Be aware that your accent is not the home accent of most of your audience. Speak clearly, slowly, but not too slow. Be aware of that this is a point. Right, body language, we already had covered that. Openness, eye contact, don't stare. What do you do with your hands? Laser pointer has one advantage, you got something in your hand, right? Keeps one hand busy. What do you do with the other? It's always a tricky issue, what to do with hands while you give a talk. Cool posture, right? Also doesn't quite work. Also doesn't work. You need to give your hands something to do. So one option, gesturing. Body language, right? You got something to do. It's the plain, simple thing. You got something to do with your hands. And then you can do little, you do gestures, you explain something, you verbalize, right? That's one option. If you don't like that, the laser pointer helps. What also helps, I need to cheat a little bit. What also often helps is you take these little cardboard things. Like this. Come on. You take these little cardboards. This is a good size, I find. They're cheap. You go into a paper shop, €2 for 500 or so, and then you get one per slide. And you do what we said earlier. You write your first sentence and your last sentence for each slide on such a cardboard. The nice thing is, this is again inconspicuous. It's small enough you can keep it in your hand. You got something to do for your hands. They have something to hold. You don't shake or something. And then when you go from one slide to the next, you just flip to the next card. You have a short look at it and then keep talking, and you go to the next slide, and you go to the next slide. Right? This is actually a good, often for people with not too much practice in giving talks, I find that often seems to work quite well. Now, details matter here. Use small cards. I've seen people using A4 paper because they didn't want to spend the €2, right? And then they picked A4 paper, one sheet of A4 paper per slide, and they won't. Yeah, it's of course not useful, right? This doesn't work. Small, and then that can work out. Give your body something to do. Walk around. You're not screwed to one spot, right? You can use the room. Also gives your audience something to look at. Don't overdo it. Don't over-regularize. I remember when I was a student, I had one professor in parallel computing, theory of parallel algorithms. Winter semester, Monday morning, 8 o'clock in the winter. And he had a slightly slow and monotone speaking voice without interruption, and he kept walking from one end of the lecture hall to the other end of the lecture hall with surprising regularity. With some pendulum going back and forth and back and forth, singing us all into sleep. He was a terribly nice guy. He was a perfect gentleman. He gave a very good class, but that was tough. That was really hard, staying awake during that class. So don't overdo it with the walking around, but still, some action is absolutely fine there. Okay. So, and then you progress through the talk slowly, but at some point, even I come to an end. It makes sense to have a clock at hand. Different options exist. Some of the fancier laser pointers, you can set a timer, and it starts vibrating 3 minutes before the end of the timer. Anything that you like is configurable. That can be quite useful, giving you a jolt that, hey, look, we need to wrap up. These dual screen layouts also show time, absolute time, and time since since it started, and really be on time. Try to be on time. I know I'm running over time already, so I repeat as I say, not as I do. Be on time. Do your trial runs for that. This is annoying, right? I'm not so stuck up that I'm saying if you go 1 second over time, you fail. This is silly. But 1 minute over time, I start looking with a frown. 2 minutes over time, I probably get up, and 3 minutes over time, I actually do kick you off, right? So be on time. If you feel time running out, skip over material. In your preparation, you identify possible sacrificial slides, stuff that you don't need to talk about. Okay, and that's pretty much it already. So, to conclude that, what I try to drive home is basically all of it is common sense, right? You behave like I described. When you stand in front of the cinema with your buddies, you behave exactly like that. It's not I'm talking weird stuff. I'm talking how people communicate with each other. You look at them. When you talk with your friends, do you turn your back to them and talk to something? No. You look them in the eye and you talk to them. Right? And you go slow and polite and clear to understand, etc., etc. Right? That's all I'm saying. I'm saying common sense things here. Don't be afraid. 98% of the students survive their seminar talks, so nothing to worry about too much. And absolutely dare to experiment. Try to do weird stuff. I've seen interesting talks. Prezi, we had interesting Prezi talks. We had talks where people actually tried giving out assignments during their seminar talks to the audience, saying, hey, now you guys, you are group A, you are group B, and you come up with you figure out this algorithm together. Go for it, absolutely. If you want to do something like that, for these 25 minutes, the audience is in your hands, right? Do something with that. Now, if you want to get some ideas, some additional ideas how to do that, we already mentioned TED Talks. Very good source for very good talks. There's a very nice summary of how to give a good research talk by Simon Peyton Jones. Many slides are stolen from him here. And there's a very nice article by Mr. Lear, Let There Be Stoning. Real fun read. He wrote that after being fed up after having to listen to too many bad research talks. And he nicely goes through all the pitfalls, all the things that you can do wrong in such a talk. So that's also, it's like 3 pages or so and really fun to read. So that's something I also recommend. Okay. I guess with that, I'd like to wrap up. Any questions, ideas, insights, comments?
Do you have any tips how to not speak too fast or to
Speak slower?
I always try this and it never works.
You always try and never works. Do you play an instrument?
Yes.
Which one?
Piano.
Piano. So you
Guitar.
got a metronome, right? Okay. Try a metronome and try to to clock your speech, your voice towards the metronome. 1 syllable per so many ticks.
Okay.
Might work.
Maybe.
Yeah. Try recordings. Try speaking in, okay, you already speak in a foreign language, English, but yeah. Try another foreign language that is more foreign. I don't know. Practice. Don't worry about the speaking too fast, though. Don't overcompensate. Right? Then I've known people then who know they are speaking fast. I'm guilty as charged, and then overcompensate by speaking extremely slow to make absolutely sure that everybody in the room understands. Don't do that. Right? Normal speed. Normal speed is perfectly okay. Don't go crazy. I didn't have the impression that you speak particularly fast. Do you? Do you think he says a couple sentences?
It's not always like this, only if I'm presenting something.
Okay. And then nerves kick in and you want to get out of that situation and subconsciously you speed up.
Yes.
Yeah, I see.
Kind of like that.
Try a metronome, that might help. Interesting. We'll put a metronome here for you. Okay? No. So remember the upcoming deadlines, right? We want the final version of your write-up. We offer to have a look at your slides and to provide feedback. If you think you do perfect slides without, absolutely go for it. Let's work for us. And then the day before, final version of the slides, so we can put that somewhere and get this done. Good? Excellent. Then we'll see each other in 2 weeks, something like that. What did we say? 20 something? 17th, 18th. Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's in 1.5 weeks, something like that. Good. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for listening.